How did you know what you wanted your money to do?
Yeah. So for me, during that analysis, I went through a variety of investing strategies, a variety of asset classes for sure. And I nailed down on short-term rentals. At the time, midterm rentals was not a fad.
Mhm.
So we can talk about that in a moment. But I nailed down short-term rentals because I saw that as being one of the most approachable asset classes. I can purchase a single family home using a 5% down loan or a 10% down loan on a fixed rate mortgage for the next 30 years.
Welcome to the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. Thanks for tuning in and taking control of your financial future. This is a show where we not only motivate and inspire, we give you actionable, real-world experience to help you live life by design. You'll hear journeys and stories from other physicians, investors, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, Brett Riggins. If you're like me, you probably love going on vacation and love being in really nice Airbnbs. And you've probably had this thought, hey, I should get an Airbnb. I should do this. This whole short-term rental thing sounds like I can do it, right? And I've heard of these tax benefits. Um, how can I do this? Well, I tell you what, it is possible. And people like today's guests really make that happen. We're going to talk about acquisition process, the returns, the locations, a little bit on tax benefits, the time and energy required, the insurance, the financing, the property managers, all of these things bundled up to make sure that you can turn your dream into a reality. And that bridge that makes that happen is action. Today's guest took that action. When she graduated with more than $500,000 in student debt, she felt like it was a life sentence, but quickly studied, learned, and took on this asset class of short-term rentals, and she is crushing it. Today, she's a retired healthcare professional and a short-term real estate investor by night. She's a 24/7 mom, though. That's for sure. Great person. I'm so excited. Everybody, please welcome Dr. Rachel Gainsbrugh to the show. The time has come. I always say that I'm excited for these things, but we've been working on this one for a while, and Rachel is in the house. Welcome to the show.
Woo! Thank you for having me, Brett.
Awesome. And I'm excited because when I started back in my journey working with physicians, I was just telling you before we started recording, I came across your profile. In the last couple of years, I've watched you grow in this short-term world, the short-term world into the midterm world. And really you've picked out this niche that's grown. And I think part of it is because the benefits, obviously, but then there are a couple of reasons why this fits well in the world of medicine, because you practice medicine and you collect rental income. So I love it. I know who you are. Let's tell the listeners just a little bit about who you are. Maybe what's your medical background?
Yeah.
Before we start talking about real estate, what's your medical background? Where'd you start and where you're at right now?
Yeah, so I started my journey really as a doctor of pharmacy. So that is the background that I have, but it was not a straight path at all. I was born in Haiti, little girl from there, raised in the inner city of Miami. I just really had a deep sense of responsibility, of faith, of work ethic. That's what I inherited was work ethic. I did not inherit money.
Yeah.
I wish I inherited money, but nevertheless, right? I saw just the sacrifices of my parents to work hard. And I thought to myself, okay, I don't want to take this in vain. So went on, got the doctorate of pharmacy. But the reality of it was between my husband and I, that came with a hefty amount of student loan debt to the tune of $500,000
Wow.
in student loans. And so I burnt the candle at both ends. My husband and I working about 5 jobs between the two of us at one point. And it's not recommended, like 1 star,
Yeah.
not recommended. But I stumbled upon real estate investing, started to consume a copious amount of podcast interviews and got to understand what real estate investing looked like. And so fast forward to today, my husband's retired from psychotherapy. I'm retired from pharmacy at the moment.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, that's really where we started.
Amazing. Yes, 5 jobs. Wow. And then just coming back to that
Yeah.
not inheriting money, but inheriting work ethic.
Yeah.
It makes me think, Rachel, of the idea of who you must become to
Yeah.
become a billionaire, and that who you become cannot be taken away from you. So the money
Mhm.
that may not have been inherited,
Yeah.
that work ethic was the important piece of that. And I don't know that that can be taught, right? I think that's just,
Mhm.
it's it's caught, it's not taught, like
Yeah.
the way that you were growing up and seeing that in your parents. And I just think that's super important. um my work ethic is tough because I feel like I can't stop sometimes.
Yeah.
you
A
know
100%, a hundred
yeah,
percent.
yeah.
Yeah. And so what my parents ingrained in me, yes, you're right. It was caught for sure. Cause I remember my parents working multiple jobs between the two of them as well, growing up, just to make ends meet. It's incredible how much they were able to accomplish with such a small budget. My dad being a cab driver, my mom working in factories.
Oh, wow.
But what they taught me was, you gotta work hard, you gotta do the education thing. And so I'm so grateful. They're my heroes to this day.
Yeah, that's awesome. And into this world now, you talked about real estate.
Yes.
Just listening to podcasts, absorbing this stuff, and we talk about this a lot. That's the knowledge piece. Knowledge is nothing without action, right? Once you take
Mhm.
that action, in my world, it creates, that's where wisdom comes from. So knowledge plus action equals wisdom.
Yeah.
And then this other piece too is like action is always the connection of dreams to reality for me
Yeah.
as well too. So you got to take action, and you did this. Tell us a little bit about where you took action from those podcasts. What part of real estate was it? Did you start in short term? Did you do long term commercial? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so the journey started with really getting laser focused on what my finances look like, right? So I don't purport to be a financial analyst or a financial advisor, but I needed to get my finances under wraps in order to navigate that $500,000 in student loan debt right after graduation. The debt did feel like a life sentence. I gotta say, it sure did. And so once I was able to get that under wraps and I started to have these small wins, I felt like I was unstoppable. And I evaluated my life from that vantage point, and I asked myself, what else is possible? What can be possible? At the moment, I wasn't completely out of debt, but we're just making some great progress. And so I took that hunger for that financial literacy knowledge into a hunger into underwriting, into evaluating real estate. And so from that perspective, I remember reading a book where I saw the breakdown of what it would cost to say to repair a variety of mechanical issues in a property. And believe it or not, that was the light bulb that went off to help me to take action. I believe a lot of us, starting out, we have the belief systems that were placed inside of us from, say, our upbringing. So, I could hear my dad in the back of my mind saying, "Well, if the HVAC isn't working, don't buy the house. If the roof is dilapidated, don't purchase the house. If there are electrical issues, don't buy the house." And so what was ingrained in me, whether I liked it or not, it was that these are insurmountable repairs that the cost of which could be, like astronomical. But I read in a book, I'm a spreadsheet girl through and through, Brett. So I read it in the book. There was a spreadsheet, a table. HVAC costs this amount, this amount. Roofs cost this amount, and so on and so forth. Plumbing costs this amount. I was like, oh, okay. Within a month, we purchased our first property after I had been in analysis paralysis for 2 years.
2 years of analysis paralysis, and this idea. I always tell everybody I came from a different. I come from the construction world, so my
Ah,
background is architectural engineering, construction management, and when I started estimating things, like I was counting screws. I mean,
yes.
I was too much. But getting into this, even to a world of that, what I call the napkin notes, right? This
Yep.
this
Hmm.
idea of, hey, is this going to work or is this not? Um, in where we're at, I can even come close with $15 a square foot, $30 a square foot, and $45 a square foot. Is this a turn? Is this does this need love, or is this just a, oh man, this is going to be a project, right? That gets us close, and it makes me think. It pulls us away from this idea that it can be done, the feeling of that, and it brings it back to the objective piece of, hey, this is math. And what
Yeah.
I love about this math piece is the acquisition piece.
Yes.
So analysis paralysis, analyzing, underwriting, all of these things to kind of get you into this process, which is great. You should never skip this piece. And you should never rely on your napkin notes to acquire a property. That's when we lean on our due diligence process
Yeah.
to make sure that our spreadsheet matches with the real world, right? That the numbers can be done. But in this process here, the acquisition piece, on this first one, did you acquire it? What were you anticipating your returns to be? How did you know what you wanted your money to do?
Yeah. So for me, during that analysis, I went through a variety of investing strategies, a variety of asset classes for sure. And I nailed down on short-term rentals. At the time, midterm rentals was not a fad.
Mhm.
So we can talk about that in a moment. But I nailed down short-term rentals because I saw that as being one of the most approachable asset classes. I can purchase a single family home using a 5% down loan or a 10% down loan on a fixed rate mortgage for the next 30 years. So I am fighting inflation, like I've got that stability there. So I can approach it and get a return on a month to month basis. So the two metrics that I looked for in those deals was a cash flow. I wanted to see at least a $2,000 per month cash flow, and my cash on cash return, I wanted a 30% cash on cash return. So cash flow is it's that money that you make at the end of the month when all the bills are paid, what's left over to you. And so, for example, if your mortgage, your insurance, your electrical bill, all of your utility comes out to $3,000 per month, and you pay that, and you're making $5,000 per month gross. That is your payouts from your guests that are staying at your properties. You take that $5,000 minus the $3,000, and that's $2,000 in cash flow for that month. So for me, that was a huge win. And so those were the types of deals I was looking to back into, but we did considerably better. That's how we ended up on Netflix, and we could talk about that in a moment. But that was my starting off point. The cash on cash return, that calculation determines, well, how fast can I reinvest my capital because I'm getting it back as quickly as possible. And so one thing that really fuels the cash on cash return is leveraging tax strategy like a cost segregation study, because
Mhm.
there's legislation right now that allows us to get 60% back on all the cash that we invest within that first year if we are able to put that property in service that year. So I'm not going to get into the tax side of things. That's not my expertise. That's why I hire real estate friendly tax strategists to make sure that we map that out for the year to know how many short-term and midterm rentals that we should be aiming for. But I anticipate a 30%, but sometimes we're able to get 80 or 90% of our cash back because of a variety of tax strategies that we take advantage of.
That is insane, those numbers, that 30% cash on cash. And I could spend
Mhm.
a whole nother show just diving into that particular piece. A $2,000 cash flow is also massive as well,
Yeah.
too. I don't want to push too far into this. I got plenty of questions to go through. But with a $2,000 a month cash flow, what is the actual, and this is on a financed deal,
Yeah. Mhm.
right? And to get that 5%, 10%, you're probably not in a commercial loan. You're in a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac personal name loan. As a $2,000 cash flow, what's your actual cash invested then? Hypothetically, on a 2,000 a month cash flow.
19,000, for instance.
Wow, 19,000.
Yeah.
So
I'm
I'm
thinking of a
doing
couple examples. 19,000, 22,000. Just depends.
so, and if we're at 10%, then obviously that means you're doing 2,000 a month cash flow on a $200,000 house.
Usually it depends. Yeah, that's a 10%. We've been able to get some 5%. Some markets you're able to get 0%, depending, even to this day, which is very interesting. So it just depends on some of the regional banks. So that's why it's important not to just go out after big box banks,
Yeah.
but regional lenders are able to do some special lending products that they may have in their back pocket.
And financing is a whole nother piece. I've got a line item here because I know in my own experience, if it's an Airbnb and I'm going for
Yeah.
like a DSCR loan, which is a commercial loan, not necessarily
Yep.
a personal loan, then it's looked at differently, it's treated differently. But you're
Yes.
not getting this if you're inside the Fannie Mae Freddie Mac box.
Correct. So what I like about the Fannie Mae Freddie Mac versus the DSCR loans, I like both of them. The Fannie Mae Freddie Mac is a great way to get started because some of our community members, they don't have the upfront cash
Mhm.
to go out and put a 20% down, 25% down, 30% down on that first deal. So I encourage get in it, where you are. If you do have it, yes, the DSCR is a great place to start for sure, because the DSCR loan does not typically count against your debt to income
Mhm.
ratio, which is pretty cool. The Fannie
DTI,
Mae Freddie
especially if
Mac
you're
does.
stacking 18 of these things up, huh?
Yeah, yeah. So you can do 10 Fannie Mae Freddie Macs,
Mhm.
but by the time you get to the fifth one, you're shot because your debt to
DTI.
income ratio is
Yep.
impacted. And that's where I tell my community members, go ahead and put it in a portfolio loan to open up the opportunity for, another set if you're able to float that. But the
Yeah.
DSCR, I think tag teaming it, Fannie Mae DSCR is one of the most effective ways to continue to grow and scale. But the beauty of it, Brett, is we operate our businesses with the highest level of, I would say, a luxury feel. And part of luxury has to do with the communication. So I truly believe less is more. We have door envy. We hear people say, I have 100 doors here and there, but that's not really appealing to me or the members of my community. They're wanting the quality over the quantity. So I'm all about quality over quantity. These are spaces and homes that we ourselves would want to visit. And so we're really strategic and intentional about the profitability as well as the guest experience that we're wanting to put out there.
And that DSCR is debt service coverage ratio. It's a type of loan product that focuses the collateral on the investment property itself,
Yes.
as opposed to your financials and every
Yeah.
business you own the last 2 or 3 years, giving your tax. So all of that is removed
Yeah.
when you're looking at the DSCR product. DSCR product is a commercial product, but sometimes you can also have that Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac conventional loan and then just quit claim into an LLC. Now, I'm not an
Yep.
attorney. I'm not
Mhm.
a mortgage broker or anything like that. So but that can be done.
Yeah.
We've done that when we've transferred inside of LLCs and stuff like that before too. This brings me to the question of location. Where
Yeah.
in the world, whether it's 5% or 10% on this $2,000 a month cash flow, which is crazy, 5% versus 10%, that changes from 200 to 400,000 in this hypothetical scenario. So
Yeah.
where are these locations? I know you told me about this website that you have, the
Mhm.
75gems.com, that
Yeah.
talks about this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the locations honestly are in a lot of places that you would not necessarily think about all throughout the United States. So for me, I actually walk through a methodology called the Crow method. Sometimes the location may be in your own backyard. Sometimes it's not, okay? Don't come for me, California. But sometimes it may be in your own backyard. And so we go through a methodology I call Crow, CROW. C stands for connected. Is there a location that you have a connection with? Is it your own backyard? We're going to test all of these locations out. Okay. So C stands for connected. Is there a location maybe you visited in the past, somewhere that you've always thought in the back of your mind, you know what? I would love to open up a short-term or mid-term rental in this market, right? Sometimes we go on a vacation, we stay at an Airbnb, and we're like, wow, I think I can do this. I think I can do even a better job than the host. There's three forks and there's 11 of us, right? So start thinking about those locations, unedited, just jot them all down. From there, R stands for recommended by professionals. So, what are you hearing? What's the buzz in terms of locations that are out there that people are saying are really good locations? I've received intel from realtors, property managers, my cleaners have intel, a title company folks, closing attorneys, right? So they have some intel. And so, whatever you're hearing, if you've had a conversation or if you're hearing word on the street from those professionals, go ahead and jot those down. From there, O stands for on trend. What is on trend? And there are blogs that are published every year. Here are the top cities that are generating XYZ amount of revenue. Jot some of those cities down that kind of resonate with you. I'm on the East Coast, so I like the Southeast, I like beaches, so I would jot some of those down. And finally, W, word of mouth. If you're in the wealth systems community or whatever community you're in, word of mouth from your masterminds, word of mouth from other investors, other physicians, others that are speaking, other pharmacists that are speaking about specific locations that they love, that's generating great revenue. Jot all of those down. And from there, we're going to do a little digging, right? We're going to do the same type of digging that the lenders are looking for the DSCR loans. They use a tool called AirDNA. And so I love that tool. I go in there. I do have to do a little bit of cleanup inside of AirDNA, but I'm looking for a couple of metrics, just like 2 or 3 metrics. Number one, I want to see the occupancy rate. And for me on AirDNA, you can do the free version. I'm looking for occupancy that is 50%. Okay, so that's my first filtering system. So if any of those cities or states have occupancy that is less than 50%, I just nix them or remove them from my list, because 50% indicates overall this is a market that people are visiting.
The entire city?
The entire city.
Okay.
I start there. Yep. So if it's 30%, I'm not interested. There's no, I've seen it. I've seen it happen over the last 5 years where someone says, I'm going to go in, I'm going to make this great. Even rural markets, that are destination, it requires a huge marketing budget to really beef up those listings. And so I want it to be easy for our community. So to make it easy, 50% occupancy rate. And from there, I am looking at the revenue potential. I want to see, well, what's the revenue potential? And that information is listed there. You can even download a table from that website. And it's part of what I'm sharing on 75 Gems is what that table would look like. That gives you the revenue potential. And so once you have the revenue potential, say the revenue potential is $100,000 per year, and we're just going to do this from a rounded numbers perspective. And you go into that market to find properties for purchase. So if there are properties on sale for $500,000 a year that fits within the buy box of the revenue potential, and you're finding a match there, well, that's a 20% gross yield. And so for me, that's a deal. I'm going all in on that. I'm going to deep dive in there, and that's really my first filtration process, where I say, okay, there's opportunity in this market. However, if I go in, it's $100,000 revenue potential, but all the homes there are 1.7 million or 2.4 million, then guess what? It does not pass that first filtration process. So those cities are gone. So I may start off with 20 cities, but your budget is your guide, right? So by the time I go through that 1 or 2 filtration processes, I'm down to 3 or 4 cities. And that's what I'm looking for. I would say the lowest yield that I would look at is like a 15% gross yield. So that's purchase price to rental revenue perspective. And from there, I would dive a little bit deeper to find what the opportunities are in that market. But if it's like a 10% or sub 10%, like that example, 100,000 revenue potential and $1 million is the average purchase price of those homes, that's not going to be a deal for me, because once all is said and done with short-term rentals, the operating expenses are anywhere from 35 to 45%, you're eating away at your income. What I love about midterm rentals, the operating expenses are about 12 to 18%, which is amazing.
Yeah, yep. And that big cut I've noticed is really the clean on the turn. Those prices get jacked up. All right. So we talked about acquisition, we talked about location, and I love that crow method that you mentioned. And again, everybody can see this and learn more about this at 75gems.com.
Yeah.
And then AirDNA is a massive piece of this as well too. Uh, what what has been the biggest holdup or feedback you get from your clients, from your students, when it comes to the time and the energy required to do this?
There's a fear. There's a fear that they don't know what they don't know. There is a fear of risk. There's a fear of spousal fear, like what will my husband think? What will my wife think when I get started? So it's a lot of fears, fear of the unknown, fear of not knowing where to start, not knowing a market. And we just covered the crow. And that's why we create these frameworks. They come out of questions from our community. So as far as management, there's a fear of I just need to hand this off to a property manager. I do want to take advantage of the tax loophole for short-term rentals. And for those who aren't aware, the tax loophole for short-term rentals allows you to get the benefits of reps status without having reps status. So rep status, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I don't know why I mentioned it, but it's a little bit complicated. But it is a bonus, and it helps offset your W-2 income, your 1099 income if you're a contractor, your K1 income, as well as your rental income. You can leverage those amazing, massive tax benefits if you launch a short-term rental and put it into service that first year, but you have to materially participate. You got to do the things. And so people are afraid, like, what if I messed up? What if someone, sets the house on fire? What if someone gets shot? What if, we see the worst of the worst in the news, a child gets harmed. And so that's crushing. That's heartbreaking. So those are some of the fears. And in order to mitigate those fears, you want to have some systems in place, and because everything is figure outable and it's totally doable. And so, did you want me to dive into a couple of the systems that?
So you talked about first of all, you said figure outable, and I love that word. No, just the rep status, the real estate professional status,
Yes.
and leveraging short term with the current laws that are in place, leveraging short term to reduce the number of material involvement hours. Material participation, I think is the word. So that's great. Just an overall, I love explaining what those acronyms mean, because it is a great way to offset your active income with passive losses by reducing that number. Sometimes, you look at that 750 hours of material participation, seems unreasonable. There are ways that you could possibly even reduce it to 100 using this method. So that 100-hour number is much more attainable, and getting to that material participation is really important. Putting it into service. And you did mention there, the fear piece when we started. Fear of fire, fear of somebody getting shot. Right before we started this recording, I actually got a phone call from a property manager saying that they just received notice from somebody that one of the properties had burnt down.
Oh my goodness.
So I've got that in my mind as we're having this conversation, but it leads me to the perfect question here about the insurance piece. And we mitigate fear with insurance by being conservative, by using these proven processes and systems that help mitigate that risk. So tell us a little bit about your experience with insurance on these Airbnbs.
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't know we were going to dive into this side of things, but as far as insurance is concerned, You want to insure a few things, right? You want to insure for damage to the goods inside of the property. So we have damage protection, damage insurance. You want to insure for the stay there. So we invite our guests to purchase travelers insurance so that if they run into a cancellation, they can go through the process to get their money back because we sure ain't giving it back.
Mm-hmm.
No offense. We
Yeah.
want we want to insure for liability, general liability. So you have homeowners insurance that you want to take advantage of that, and depending on what policy you have, you'll see what's covered there. And I think that's it. I think that's it. Damage, general, homeowners insurance. Um, yeah, and of course, we like having a short-term rental insurance as a part of that general insurance liability because what it does for me is it insures against bed bugs, which is like one of the
Oh, yeah.
worst things that can happen. Thank goodness we have not experienced it from a host perspective. We have experienced it from an end user perspective. Not fun.
Yeah.
So bed bugs, it covers for that because that can be costly. That could eat up your margins, and loss of revenue due to some type of mishap. It could be a storm. So a loss of revenue insurance as
Yeah.
well is a part of that general short-term rental insurance that you want to insure for.
And that to me just comes back to knowing what you're looking for and then going
Mhm.
out and finding what you're looking for. Because a lot of us, when we start out with financing and insurance,
Yes.
we have this conditioned thought, right? There's these
Mhm.
limitations in our mind, like, oh, well, this is what they said. So, I mean, they do insurance, so that's the way it should be. No, you should figure out what you need, what's going to suit
Yeah.
your system the best, and then go find it because they're out there. And there
Yeah.
are plenty of insurance providers who are specific. I mean, they may even be specific to Airbnb now.
Oh yeah.
So definitely know what you're looking for, and then you can go find it. The property manager piece of this, we've bumped into it a couple times during the conversation.
Yeah.
With that $2,000 a month cash flow in our hypothetical world, is
Mhm.
that self-managed or is
A
that property
hundred
manager?
percent. Yeah, no,
Self-managed.
100% self-managed. So I don't recommend property managers. No offense, property managers, love you to pieces, especially for that first year. So we have something inside of our community. I call it the depreciation double dip. So that first year, you take advantage of that bonus depreciation by managing yourself, and then we convert the properties into midterm rentals where say you get two bookings from a homeowner's insurance company. So this is the opposite side of the spectrum there. You get two bookings from a homeowner's insurance company, you're covered for the year because those bookings, they range anywhere from 5 months to 13 months.
Oh, wow.
So really, really interesting. Our guests are coming from all states, State Farm. Their homes have experienced some type of catastrophic damage where it is deemed unlivable. Well, where's a family of five going to stay? They can't stay in a hotel for 13 months.
Best
So they
Western.
stay in our homes. Ooh, not a vibe, not a vibe. No offense, Best Western.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a big piece. And do your boots have to be on the ground in order to property manage? So yeah, I went through the crow process and I picked out
Yeah.
something where, I just love going to this place, but I don't
Yep.
live there. Do I
Mhm.
have to be on site in order to be the property manager?
I love these questions, Brett. Oh my gosh, this is such an elevated conversation. You do not have to be boots on the ground. As a matter of fact, you wouldn't believe the amount of trusted cleaners and handymen that I have all over the US. Just amazing people who love me. I love them back, who love our properties, who love our guests. Our cleaners are the boots on the ground.
Mhm.
And so, thank goodness for this little thing. And I'm holding up my cell phone for the listeners on here, we can FaceTime. They're showing me what they're seeing. If they have to replace a photo, I can have a look, or I have an assistant who can have a look and tell them how high or how low to stick it on the wall, all through
Mhm.
FaceTime. So it's definitely doable without having to be there in person. I do like to visit in person to close on the deal just to make sure that once I'm opening my wallet, guys, I want to see, I got to
Yep.
see, but some members of our community just did not have the luxury. I have a client in Hawaii who purchased a property in Florida. That's not an easy trek. So had to rely a lot on FaceTime video tours, those types of things as well. So it's very doable just with your phone, with good communication, consistent communication with your boots on the ground. And the cleaners serve so many roles, you wouldn't believe it. And tools like Instacart, like someone reaches out and say, hey, I don't have a hair dryer. It's missing. We're like, why is that missing? That's weird. Order it on Instacart. Within the hour, there's a hair dryer at your home. I mean, it's really, really doable.
Is it more difficult to hit the material participation required if you're not boots on the ground?
That's a great question. It can be if you're not being strategic. So the guest communication piece that has to come into play with the with hosting a short-term rental, it can take some time, right? Setting up automations for the system can take some time. So that initial launch, and most of our members like to initially start looking for properties around August, September. So now is the time. They launch in October, November. And then by the time it's the end of the year, as long as it's during the calendar year, they're locked in. They're good to go.
And you got a turnkey property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're good to go. And finally, if they, if you start in January, that's where, I could see it being difficult to hit mature participation if you have a lot of members on your team that are doing a lot of work on the property.
And you're saying the time of year makes it easier to hit material participation. How does that relate to the number of hours required?
As long as you have completed more hours, and don't quote me, guys, please.
You're not a CPA.
Okay.
Rachel's not a CPA.
I'm not a CPA. I'm not a CPA. Yeah. So as long as your hours exceed the hours of anyone else that is working with you on your team, and you can accomplish that if it's you doing a lot of the, say, the automation setup work, you're taking care of all of that initial work, and you've launched, say, in October or November for that calendar year. So it's that calendar year. So 2 months in, you did a lot of that work. So your hours will exceed the hours of your cleaners. Say they came in and they cleaned the property twice, right? And that's it.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry if you can hear my dog.
No, I can't. Nope. No dog. Oh, I think I just heard a dog. What kind of dog is it? Yep.
They're Chihuahua Pug mixes.
Oh, wow. They're
called
full
Chugs.
of activity, huh?
Yeah, I'm going to text. Please help.
Maybe Instacart's there with that hairdryer you're talking about.
Somebody's here. Goodness. Well, do you mind if I stand up and close the door real quick?
No, you're fine.
I think that will help. Puppy, stop. Be sweet. They were quiet all day, but they decided,
They wanted to be on the show. All right. So if I could, I love this question. If I could take you back 10 years and set you beside someone who was on the same path as Rachel 10 years ago, whether it's in medicine, whether it's in life in general, being a loving parent, or just a dog owner looking to get more time with the puppies, and you had this knowledge that you have now in life, in real estate, in your profession, and you were set beside this person that was on a similar path as you 10 years ago, what would you tell that person?
I would tell her, girl, there is more than one way to be successful, and it really doesn't have to look like what you were taught in the past. Be open to new paths. Do not let fear hold you back from exploring opportunities, especially opportunities like real estate that could completely change your life sooner than you think.
That's awesome. That is great advice. And everything that we've talked about here is also great advice. I love it. I could do 2 or 3 more episodes with you. So we're going to have to book something out where we can dive into these things that we've brushed over. but so
For
much
sure.
information in there. And I can tell, and I always love saying this for the listeners as well, your experience that you have with the information that you share, who you are, the way that you share it, your genuine approach to things. I absolutely love it and extremely grateful to have you on this show and throw us the little gem, the 75gems.com, where everybody has to go to not only connect with you, but grow with you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Brett. And I really hope everyone shares this episode, shares this podcast, because it's a lot of work to put this information out and so much value that you're putting out there. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. And to the listeners out there today, you better hit replay on this one a few times because once you get that seed planted and you start doing your underwriting, you get in that analysis paralysis. This is the kind of stuff where you need to reach out, connect, listen again, but go do. The biggest part is go do. So go to 75gems.com and connect with Rachel. Her resources as she's built this out. She's got her own podcast, has been doing this for a while. And the coolest thing about expanding your associations is building this network is sharing the riches with everybody. And when you're inside of a group like this, where it's not what they can get from you, but what they can get for you, there's a difference made in everybody's lives. It is beautiful. Thank you for taking the time today and sharing your life with us and giving us your attention today. This is the Real Estate Mogul MD.